Hello and welcome back to the 60th episode of the Oligarchy Disruptor podcast with your host, Bennett Leon. And of course, we have the lovely Ashley Downing with us as well.
Hello.
All right, guys. So today we have a very interesting video lined up for you, or if you're listening, listening episode for you to enjoy. We are going to talk about how, or if Bernie Sanders was cheated by the DNC, and at any time. We're going to be focusing on the 2016 election to compare, but he was cheated both times. At least that's in our opinion. That is not like accepted by the media or anything like that. But then again, what if the truth? If they would actually sponsor the truth, then that would be the case. But they don't. So they're against that. So we're also going to talk about a video that you are going to see Elizabeth Warren talk about if Bernie Sanders was cheated in the election. And I think it's going to be really funny. It was very enjoyable for me to watch Elizabeth Warren talk because she was such a different person back then, such a different candidate than she is now. But you're going to see those differences. She was the progressive lion in the Senate. But we will go ahead and just discuss that first. And then we'll go into a couple of articles by the Observer, looking into the court decisions on those lawsuits that were filed by the Bernie Sanders campaign against the DNC because of that rigging of the election. So let's go ahead and jump in and watch that first video by CNN. Of course, I was a little reluctant, honestly, to pull them up, but I mean, at the same time, they had a really interesting video that I wanted to see. It's just a little over a minute long, and of course, we have Jake Tapper here interviewing Elizabeth Warren once again on the rigging of the election against Sanders. So let's see and hear what she has to say.
We learned today from former Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Donna Brazile that the Clinton campaign, in her view, did rig the presidential nominating process by entering into an agreement to control day-to-day operations at the DNC. The Clinton campaign controlling the party's staffing, strategy, finances, communications, and that agreement was entered into in August 2015, a year before she defeated Senator Bernie Sanders. This must shock you.
This is a real problem. But what we've got to do as Democrats now is we've got to hold this party accountable. When Tom Perez was first elected chair of the DNC, the very first conversation I had with him is to say, you have got to put together a Democratic Party in which everybody can have confidence that the party is working for Democrats rather than Democrats are working for the party. And he's being tested now. This is a test for Tom Perez. And either he's going to succeed by bringing Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders representatives into this process, and they're going to say it's fair, it works, we all.
So I just wanted to stop it really quick and point out that she, at that point, realized that the incumbent, or AKA like Hillary Clinton, had to take on and accept a lot of the policies that Bernie Sanders was proposing. They had to take on people that he was supporting and had in his campaign and stuff. Obviously, she didn't make a ton of concessions. I mean, overall, she lost to Donald Trump. I mean, that could have been for a multitude of reasons, as she would say. She would tell you herself that it was like 20 different reasons, when in reality, it was basically just herself. So we will continue the video, but I just thought it was funny to see how Warren is such a stark contrast to what she is now.
Or he's going to fail, and I very much hope he succeeds. I hope for Democrats everywhere. I hope for Bernie and for all of Bernie's supporters that he's going to succeed.
Very quickly, Senator, do you agree with the notion that it was rigged?
Yes.
In one word, yes. Let's talk about that video. Initial thoughts, Ashley? I kind of gave my own little gist on it right away, but go ahead.
You know, since it's a flashback video, I have a lot of different thoughts watching it now versus if I would have heard it back then. Um, I call bullshit, honestly. She didn't endorse Bernie.
This time
She,
around,
yes,
or
this
then,
time around.
or then actually.
True. And she kind of was supposed to be this progressive, like, I don't want to say protege, but they worked really closely together. They were friends in the Senate. And then for her to not back him this time around, and not even, I mean, she was, like you said, I mean, we had a bet that she wasn't going to say anything, and she was just going to kind of hide in the bushes until this was all panned out. And that's exactly what she did. So now is the time for Democrats to hold some type of accountability. No, she's never believed that. I don't think that.
I'm glad you
Or
brought that
her
up
actions
because
don't say that she believes that.
I'm really glad you brought that up because that actually highlights like how much she's changed. You know, not only that, but that she brought up those claims of saying that like Bernie Sanders thought that a woman couldn't be president, like those sexist claims against Bernie Sanders, completely baseless. I mean, who knows? Like, I'm not gonna say like 100% she's a liar. I mean, I don't know that for 100% fact, but it doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, and it doesn't seem like anyone bought into that after all, because soon after she said that, and that kind of happened and was in the news for a while, she started plummeting in the polls. I don't know if you guys remember that, but people see through those kinds of things. And but the point why we bring this video up is because at the very end, like her one word, like straight to it, yes, the thing was rigged. You know, like this. It was all rigged against Sanders, and then he wasn't the only one. You know, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the chairwoman of the DNC, who I mean was leading the whole thing, right? She had to resign because of the scandal that went on there and the rigging of the election in 2016 against Bernie Sanders. Donna Brazil, one of the people that was working also with the KFC, the DNC, one of the people that was working with them, she actually got caught giving the questions before the debates to the Clinton campaign. So they would provide the questions that they were going to ask them, or to specifically Clinton, and she would be ready. Therefore, it's cheating. It's cheating, and to the notion that nothing of what they did, that either the DNC or the Clinton campaign, the notion that it didn't hurt Sanders' campaign or Bernie Sanders is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely.
Yeah, I yeah, I mean, I think that when people hear the words rigged campaign, rigged election, um, you automatically have speculation there and aren't really sure if it's just a conspiracy theory or if this is actually accurate. But what's completely mind boggling to me is, and I think now's a good time to bring up those articles, is the fact that this was, in the court's eyes, completely legal. Um, so I mean, yes, is this the history behind it article?
So,
Yeah, so basically in this article they talk about how the lawyers for the DNC argued in court, and they were basically saying, well, sure, yeah, the election was rigged. You know, there were people on the Democratic National Committee who, clearly favored Clinton. But Sanders supporters, I mean, it didn't affect them at all. It didn't affect Sanders' campaign at all. And then, yeah, you highlighted that part there. Did you want to read it?
yeah, I highlighted this because I thought this was the thing that stood out most from this article, talking about once again how they had the right to do what they did basically to Bernie Sanders
Mm-hmm.
in 2016, and that was that the attorneys representing the DNC have previously argued that Sanders supporters knew that the primaries were rigged, therefore annulling any potential accountability the DNC may have. In the latest hearing, they doubled down on this argument, saying, and I quote, the court would have to find out that people who fervently supported Bernie Sanders and who purportedly didn't know that this favoritism was going on would have not given to Mr. Sanders to Senator Sanders if they had known that there was this purported favoritism. So go ahead.
Which is just crazy to me.
Absolutely.
But like I said, what's mind-boggling
Like
to
they
me
knew?
is that they are completely admitting to everything in this class action lawsuit. I mean, they are just saying it doesn't matter, that there was nothing illegal about it, that people should know that there is favoritism in the election of the primary candidate, and that there's nothing illegal about it.
Absolutely.
So,
Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I was just actually gonna continue on to the next article.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. And then I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this one.
Oh, okay. So this was kind of like the decision, and the court decided that, well, first, they agreed, yes, that the Clinton administration was clearly favored in the 2016 primary. And it says in the second paragraph, in evaluating plaintiffs' claims at this stage, the court assumes their allegations are true, that the DNC and Wasserman Schultz held a palpable bias in favor of Clinton and sought to propel her ahead of her Democratic opponent. So at this stage of the game, like they say after this, it's kind of just assumed that that's true. But what they're now trying to figure out is, was the Sanders campaign and Sanders himself and his supporters, were they harmed? Was there harm caused by this rigged election? So then they say the court, go back up.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're fine. The court must now decide whether plaintiffs have suffered a concrete injury, particularized to them, or one certainly impending, that is traceable to the DNC and its former chair's conduct, Wasserman. The keys to entering federal court. So basically they're saying that's the reason, that's what they would have to figure out if the case was going to go out any farther. And then it says the court holds that they have not. So it's basically, in my eyes, how I see this is it's basically saying, yes, the election was rigged, but there is nothing illegal about it, and therefore there is nothing to stop them from doing it continuously. And the court has upheld their actions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What I think is go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to talk about this part here. While it may be true, this is part of the quote from the court. While it may be true in the abstract that the DNC has the right to have its delegates go in back rooms like they used to and smoke cigars and pick their candidate that way, the DNC, through its charter, has committed itself to a higher principle. I mean, and that's true if they're committing to the higher principle, as in like getting subverting democracy, undermining the will of the voter, rigging the election fraud, election conspiracy, all these different charges. If that's the case, then they're definitely doing a spot on job, gold star for you guys, DNC.
Yeah.
But I think it's absolutely insane that they basically are saying that they have the right to do this. And this should go as like a lesson to the voters, in that this is a private party. They have certain rights that they have, and the lawyers will defend them tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
Even though their charter says that they will do this and that, they obviously don't give a fuck about any of that stuff, and that's becoming increasingly evident. It became evident in 2016, and they hit it even harder out of the ballpark in 2020, doing something I have never seen in politics happen, where someone that has so much momentum, so much energy, so much money behind him, and grassroots support, especially in the case of Bernie Sanders, after winning those first few states and still losing the nomination
Yeah.
because of the Democratic Party intervening once again and kind of using their super delegate system and having all of these former candidates or all these candidates drop out except for key ones. They left, of course, Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren, the only other progressive that could hurt Bernie Sanders and take away voters from him,
Mm-hmm.
even though she was going to lose no matter what. And of course, Bernie Sanders. Well, Bernie Sanders failed in many ways too. He failed to secure the endorsement of fellow progressives, Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, even someone that endorsed him, dropped out from the vice chair position of the DNC to endorse Bernie Sanders because of all those the tampering with the election and rigging it for Clinton back then. She took that principled stance, and she didn't do it again in 2020, which I thought was very notable.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I think that
that's
what
crazy.
this I I can't help but keep going back to the idea that our voting rights were kind of built on this idea that the American voter is not well informed. So we need somebody else to help us make a good decision. And making the decision of the next presidential candidate or the next president of the United States was apparently too heavy of a task to be given to American citizens. So we had the Electoral College. And as media has become more readily accessible to people and news is so widespread, and you can really, though we have figured out how hard it is, you can really, claw your way through different news outlets and really try to make an informed decision. Now we have these other obstacles too, like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and how they're set up, specifically how a Democratic candidate is elected in the primary. It's just like there's all these obstacles, like they don't think that people are capable of making informed decisions, so they find it necessary, and it's almost like they're so because they're trying to make the courts agree with them, it's almost like they're saying like, oh, well, we're being noble, like this is good, we're helping the American public make good decisions by putting forth the best candidate that we think can do the best job at being the next US president. And it's like, who are you to tell me that this is the next president, that this is going to be the best next choice? So I don't know. I just kind of I can't help but think about that.
It's definitely an insult
The
to the
history.
intelligence of every American citizen, definitely. And then Bernie Sanders would even say that. He would talk about it in different ways, though. But he would say that when Hillary Clinton back then in 2016 would say things like, oh, yeah, because I get this X amount of donations from all these different types of people, all these special interests, it doesn't affect the way I vote or have done any of the things that I've done. And then he's like, do you think I'm stupid? Do you think the American people are stupid? He basically said that. Like, you insult the intelligence of the American people when you say things like that. And I mean, those things are tried and true. Like,
Yeah.
of course, like we found out later on, or even then we knew that because of WikiLeaks that we had the transcripts of actually her 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 speeches that she gave to Wall Street. You know, and then and which he was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for.
Hmm.
The Clintons became very wealthy after leaving the White House in the 90s too. So very interesting to kind of look back on everything and see how everything is really stacked up for Clinton. Like in the very beginning in 2016, Clinton, well, it's kind of different. 2016 comparatively speaking to 2020 because there were some changes that were made. In the first round in 2016, the super delegates were a thing, whereas like now they weren't really a thing
Hmm.
this time around. Well, not officially.
I was, yeah.
So the first time around they had those super delegates where the super delegates, if you didn't know, are people, representatives of the Democratic Party. These are U.S. representatives for the Democrats, the Democratic governors, Democratic senators. You get the picture. Yeah. And
Past politicians.
these people all voted for the most part for Hillary Clinton. They secured her nomination way more. Like, you have to meet of course, to meet the numbers, right? You have to meet the pledge delegates, and you had, in 2016, you had to meet the super delegate count, and the super delegates were enough to kind of like teeter the edge. Enough, I mean, states that Bernie Sanders won the popular vote and still lost majority of the delegates because of the super delegates that were given to Hillary Clinton, even opposed their own constituents, especially in states like Minnesota, where we had Senators Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken. They were both super delegates in 2016, and both voted for Clinton against the will of their own constituents because they had all voted for Bernie Sanders. So it's a really interesting thing to see how the establishment is voting for the establishment people. They're protecting their own rather than going with the will of the people. You know, and it's really interesting to note that. But it's not. It shouldn't be a surprise. You guys should kind of see this as a trend. These people are always sticking to with each other because they don't want to see their life change in a substantial way. They don't want to have to work harder. That's why they don't let the president, like, they don't take back those war powers from the president, even though they always talk shit about him for doing those things. Well, it's really Congress's authority to declare war, but they won't do that. Why? Because they'd rather have the president be on TV talking about like how he's going to do all these military things and make him look stupid, rather than have it be them. So I mean, that's just one example, but yeah, this shit is rigged. And overall, is there any other thing that I didn't cover and how they rigged both times?
No, I don't think so. I was just gonna say, oh, because you were talking about the super delegates, um, a really good way of seeing how obvious that is. Bernie and was actually projected to win a lot of swing states. And with the super delegates, it actually pushed Hillary over the edge, but then come around for the actual presidential um, race against Trump, she lost a lot of swing states, and because she didn't campaign there. So it's just really interesting. Like, Bernie would have ended up, well, he was projected to win those states. So it's just kind of funny to me how the Democratic committee kind of puts forth these establishment candidates regularly, and they know that it's not the will of the people. It clearly wasn't the will of the people, and this time around it wasn't either, and they did the same thing.
Absolutely. It really wasn't. They're continuing their trend like they have for decades and decades and decades of thinking that they're smarter than the American people, really, and putting the candidate that they believe will do the best job against whoever they're voting against.
Yeah.
Which oftentimes they're wrong is the thing, you know? Like, if you're trying to get the majority of the voters to vote for your candidate, but not at the same time not listen to the will of the voters and who they're choosing for the candidate, how the fuck are you expecting to win? And the answer is they don't. They don't. The Democratic Party, it has shown that they're more willing to lose to Donald Trump and the Republicans than to put a progressive in the White House. They proved it in 2016, and they hammered it in 2020. And they're going to not let any progressive people actually make any significant difference.
Well, I think because
it was also, I really quick, I want to mention that it's also part of Bernie's fault, because Bernie Sanders, even though he has this giant movement behind him, all these people that really believe in him, diehard fans, people that won't vote for anybody else, the people that believe in him, they are upset, including me, because Bernie Sanders doesn't call out the Democratic Party. He didn't call them out in 2016 when they did it to him. He didn't call it out this time either in 2020. Like, how are the American people at scale supposed to know about all these injustices and actually care and want to do these things if the candidate they're supporting and giving all this money to and all this stuff is not even doing it? Like, he's not doing it himself. He's not railing against the party that's fucking him.
Yeah.
And like, that's how is that a winning strategy? He wanted to lose.
I was going to say, because he didn't want to win, at least not as bad as he claimed that he did. He wasn't willing to do what it took to,
$1,000,000%.
and which is really crazy to me because, and we were just talking about this before the podcast, he talked such a big game. He said that he was going to take on Wall Street, take on big businesses, take on the pharmaceutical industry, the insurance companies, and excuse me, you can't even take on your own political party. I don't know. And what I was going to say earlier is just the fact that is Democrats, Republicans, both are working for the same type of people, the top 1%, the establishment, the corporations, the industry, healthcare industry, any multi-billion-dollar, million-dollar corporation. That's who they're really working for, and that's why they continuously put forth these candidates who are status quo, who aren't progressive, because they don't want to upset their investors, upset their lobbyists, the people who helped them get in office all these years. So I don't think it's like a shock that this is happening, but it is a shock that not more people know about it, or not more people aren't upset about it.
I feel like, especially with Democrats, what the problem is that they don't care about it. They don't care, or they don't believe that it actually happened.
But how can you not, when there's literally articles coming out? DNC lawyers argue DNC has right to pick candidates in back rooms. Court concedes the DNC had the right to rig the election. Like, when you have articles that come out, like, and it's from the Observer. I mean, I'm not saying that every you should trust every news outlet, but then do a little bit more research and see how accurate this is. It's a legitimate lawsuit. I don't think that you can really lie too much about that. I think that people don't want to admit that this two-party system is not working. People are afraid of change, and they don't. And I think that people are more afraid of Trump being president again, which to me is completely ludicrous, than standing up for their right to vote and how that is being infringed this election and last election.
Mm-hmm. And it really has been. But we'll see what people want to do. Let's talk about what we're going to do this time around, and our own personal choices. I'll start by talking about what I'm going to do and what I'm planning to do this presidential election come November, right? So, now that my choices are between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and the third party options, whoever they turn out to be, I believe Howie Hawkins is the Green Party candidate. And I don't know who the other people are, but whatever. So now that we have two rapists and then whoever else is deciding to run, I kind of decided that for the presidential election, what I'm going to do is I'm going to protest vote, and I'm going to write in Bernie Sanders. And after that, I'm going to vote like how I usually vote, and vote for like whatever there is going on in November in my like local and state elections and stuff. So my voice is also heard. So if you guys are listening to this and you guys are in the same position where you don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils, then definitely consider the option, or definitely make the choice still to go and vote, because there are other things to vote for other than the presidency. There are representatives offices that are going up again for re-election, senators, you name it, many
Mm-hmm.
things to vote for. But you should definitely make your vote heard. That's one of the only powers that we have as citizens of this great country. So definitely make your voice heard. But that's definitely what I'm going to do. I don't want to give them. Let me tell you why. I don't want to give them any more power over us. Like, I don't want to continue the cycle. Like, think of it this way, like, guys. Like, what happens if Joe Biden wins? Like, if he wins, we're just gonna get a crazier, more alt-right, more like Nazi, like everything that Donald Trump is, but more, to address the, like, how shitty of a Democratic president that we were gonna have. The Republicans are not just gonna sit idly by and watch Obama 2.0 in the White House. They're gonna come back with something harder, much harder, to beat than him. Someone worse than Trump. I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, someone that could. I mean, as bad as he is probably going to beat Joe Biden. Let's be honest. The only thing that could save Joe Biden at this point is, A, if he changes his policies in a really radical way, or his VP pick could possibly save him, because he's just at such an old age and declining especially with his cognitive ability. But I'm assuming also with his health, he is getting older. Um, I think that could possibly save him. As shitty as it kind of sounds to say that he's probably
Yeah.
probably gonna die soon. I mean, that's the truth, and I think that the VP pick for him is a really important one, and probably one that could save him come November. But that's what I'm gonna do. Let's go ahead and see what you're gonna do.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought up that last point, because I am going to mention that too. But I am also on board with protesting the Democratic Party. I think that voting is important, no matter whether you are going to vote for the party's candidate or not. Third party is always an option too. I'm always, cheering people on who vote third party, but yeah, I am gonna vote for Bernie Sanders as well. I'm gonna write him in on the ticket. I think that that's the best way to really show protest and show that Bernie did. And I'm hoping a lot of other people do this too. That I think that it will really show Bernie was the candidate that the majority of Americans wanted, the majority of Democrats wanted, and that we are not going to let our vote be swayed by somebody that you put forth. Sorry, not sorry. So definitely highly considering doing that. I think I'm pretty sure that I'm going to end up doing that. The only thing is, we were talking earlier about possibly having a progressive VP, and like you said, Bennett, I think that could possibly save Biden. Not just my vote for Biden, but other people's vote, progressives, especially Bernie supporters, I think are already planning on not voting for Biden. So if there's a chance that he has a progressive VP,
Why
and
are
I
you
think
telling
a
the
lot of
news? Why you
oh
brought that
yeah,
up?
well, so Stacey Abrams is actually like actively seeking this role to be VP on Biden's ticket. So that's really positive, honestly. I think she would be a great running mate. Biden has already said that he was going to pick a woman to be his vice president pick. So I don't think that rules her out. I think the fact that she's a progressive is obviously putting her down a little bit lower on the list. But I think that the Democratic committee is going to see that they're losing support because of this whole situation with Bernie, especially, New York coming out saying they're going to take Bernie off his ticket. I think that a lot of Democrats are going to be upset by this, and the committee is going to realize that. And so maybe picking a progressive won't seem like such a radical idea. I'm not really hopeful about that, but if Biden does pick Stacey Abrams, or someone who is more progressive. Well, I'm not more progressive, someone who is a progressive, and there's a chance we could get a progressive president, I may slide over to the Biden ticket. But that's a big maybe too, just because I think it's a cliche, once in a lifetime type thing about having a progressive president. I would really love that. And I'm not really sure Biden's going to last the full term, but I have big moral a dilemma voting for Biden. So right now, I'm writing in Bernie Sanders. There's a possibility, Stacey Abrams, if you win that VP pick, maybe.
And I think that's a great place to wrap it up. So, once again, guys, thank you so much. I hope you got a lot of value out of this episode. Once again, our only intention is to educate you, make you aware of all the things that are going on a daily basis in this country, things that the mainstream media, your representatives in government, many people, corporate oligarchs, they do not want you to know this information, because why? It all affects them negatively. It affects the status quo. It threatens the power that be, So the more, that one phrase, knowledge is power. And it stays true here. So once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Follow us on our social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook chatbot. So thank you, guys, and we will see you on the next episode.
Bye.